Oh, he's good.
I just
He's
closed the door.
good.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
I just
We run a professional ship here.
I just saw your comment in the private chat there, Hutch. Yeah, maybe. That may be a true statement. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for I'm losing it. Oh my gosh. One of these days, you guys are going to show up to the show. You're going to come here. You want to hear what I have to say and the other guys and the whole business. And you're going to be like, hey, what's going on the Mattriachy? And it's not going to be the Mattriachy anymore. But I haven't decided when that's going to happen. So anyway.
Are you going to rebrand? Is that what we're talking about?
Yep. Yeah, Hutch and Cartoonicus convinced me that it was stupid to hold on to a name that's so hard to find. And I have to agree that my love of bad puns probably should be second place to, search engine optimization, even in the age of AI. Anyhow, today
I think my only contribution was pointing out that if you're going to, you might as well do it now where you have a small audience.
Yes. I believe it was more than that, but I can't remember, and I'd have to go back and research, and I don't want to do that for that thing. Anyway, this is nonsense. Nobody came to listen to this conversation.
Yeah, SEO.
SEO. You can watch other shows for that, my friends. Tonight, we're here to talk about Hutch's recommendation for a Great Metal Men story. And it's Action Comics, $5.90 and $5.99, which is hilarious because it's a two-parter. It's a perfect two-parter, but it's separated by 9 months. Or is this when they were doing weekly?
No, this would be 9 months apart. Yeah,
9 months apart. But my goodness, it's great. It's such a great combo. This story. So, before we get started on it, of course, we did a big long show about a month ago. Hutch was talking about the Metal Men and how exciting that was. And we had it picked as all part of the plan. But Hutch, why did you pick? I know we talked about this last time, but
sure.
For the people who may not have tuned in or may have tuned out before the end of the last show, why did you pick this duology?
Mainly, it's because John Byrne is taking a crack at the Metal Men, and he's bringing them up to the 80s. This is like their first modern interpretation, I'd say, where up until then, it seemed like they actually had rivets and they actually had gears and wires and everything. And he's saying, this isn't really how it doesn't make sense given how much they shape change and stuff like that. And he comes up with a science that kind of works and explains how, you can't have an entirely solid platinum and solid gold robots. And that's a lot of a precious metal walking around, So he comes up with some scientific explanation for how they work. And I really thought that he was kind of going from there into trying to spin off a Metal Men series, maybe of his own. And when the Metal Men miniseries does come out years later, it actually thanks them for setting it up and doing the initial steps. So it sounds like it's been in development a long time, like since this comic book series. But
I want to.
It's based on these, yeah.
To kind of ping off of that, Metal Men are, and this is okay, by the way. It's totally fine. Not every character can maintain their own standalone series. For forever, Captain America couldn't maintain his own series. Like every time they tried, it would just fizzle out. And it wasn't until they put him on the Avengers that it was like, oh yeah, this actually works, because the character is good, but people don't want to just see only his adventures, where he's fighting a guy whose superpower is the villain is the guy who wields a towel. It was just you know what I mean. Like there's certain characters, they work better when they're part of a larger universe, and you always want to see them a little bit more, but you don't get the opportunity to do so. Mm-hmm. I feel like the Metal Men are exactly that. I don't I like them, and every time I see them, I want to see more of them. But if you said, "Wow, here's a monthly Metal Men-ish series," I'd be like, I don't know if I really want that. So I think they're so like them and their appearances in these 2 issues. It's that kind of situation where you always want to keep your audience wanting more, but you don't always want to provide it. So like they feel like they feel like they're part of this world, and they feel like and in the gaps between these 2 issues, the 9-month gap, it feels like, oh man, what's been going on with the Metal Men? I feel like I'm missing out, and this is like an effective storytelling technique, and I think it's way more effective than having 9 issues of a Metal Men issue comic. I feel like that's effectively using them, because I do like them. I like them. I actually have a soft spot, especially the way John Byrne draws Platinum. She's really hot. The whole Pygmalion Pinocchio thing that she has with Magnus is always cool. But that's just kind of my general feeling on Metal Men. I think they are really cool, but I don't know if they're cool enough to have a standalone series. They're cooler when they're part of a larger thing.
That's a good point, and also having had a 12-issue maxi series written by Dan DiDio all about the Metal Men, it is little hard to take because it's like they're a self-contained group. They're all the same essentially. They all are robots with human emotions that they struggle with. And it's like their only person to bounce off of is Will Magnus, who half the time is insane. I mean, he really is. He has gone insane like 5 times. So, in fact, when 52 came out, the weekly series, that was one of the things they addressed, is that he is considered a mad scientist because of all the times he's gone insane, that they invite him to the island of mad scientists. And he's like, I'm a good guy. And they're like, no, come hang around with Tio Maro and everybody else. You're a mad scientist. And he's like, okay, I admit sometimes I go off my meds. It's like, but
I'm an angry scientist.
Yeah,
he's angry scientist.
I feel like this is a conversation you'd see between the superhero cafe and the villain pub.
Yeah,
right.
He's gone crazy so many times. It's like, so he's not really stable, and there really isn't another human character except for General Caspar, who's the military liaison, and that's about it. There is no other human interacting with the Metal Men. They kind of need that. And so I always thought if I ever did a series, I would actually like open it up. They need to have other people interacting with them besides just Will Magnus, because that's
and it's so weird because you look at most robot series, right? And they know that, right? Whether it's Robot Man, who's really a human, right? I'm thinking of the Golden Age Robot Man, who's a human in a robot suit, but he still has regular humans that he interacts with, and they're the foil for his humanity, right? Or you have Red Tornado. Red Tornado has his foster family, and all that kind of stuff. It's like other people have figured that out, but the Metal Men, and Byrne uses it very effectively in this story. It's really neat. In the second part, which we'll talk to, the Metal Men interacting with the mad scientist that they hire. Their betrayal arc is neat. Sorry, spoiler. But them even the interaction with Superman, right? Is really fun and wholesome. And I gotta say, guys, I know we're gonna talk about Superman later, but just as an intro, did you guys feel as like comfortable as like stocking foot in the winter next to the fireplace, comfortable with Superman in these comics?
It's very cozy. I agree. It's cozy.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, it was like one of these things where like I can't remember the last time I read a Superman comic and just came apart just smiling, right? Not trying to like dissect the
That was me after that was me after the movie. But the other thing I wanted to bring that Hutch brought up that I think was interesting, and this is something I'm going to be saying this a lot, by the way, tonight. I'm going to be saying a lot. This is something I'm trying to do in my own comics. I like the fact that it's really cool when we're able to separate characters into specialties and even subspecialties when it comes to some of the sci-fi characters, as opposed to just I am the science guy, and it's like like it kind of a it ends up being a little lamer sometimes when we treat all sciences the same, and the fact that you have like the fact that there's like I guess like 3 major roboticists in DC, and they really like focus on that subspecialty. You have Will Magnus, T.O. Morrow, and Professor Ivo in particular.
Yep.
And the 3 of them are just like, we're the robot guys. If you want a robot, you really come to us for it. And I think that's really neat, and it allows the stories it allows this particular story and its sequel, specifically the 599, some really interesting ground to play with, because when we get to 599, there's another mad scientist guy who comes in and like his unique abilities and specialties, and then like interact with Will Magnus, and it's actually it leads to some interesting storytelling nuances that you don't get with the what I would call the modern day approach to science writing, which is just treating science like it's a power level. Where it's like this is what we see with like Riri Williams and other Marvel characters, where it's like I'm smarter than you, therefore I do the science better, and it's like that you just setting aside the silliness of that, it's just cool when it's like I have a specialty or a subspecialty, and you get more interesting dynamics.
Well, and like in society, let me zoom out on this on in 2 different ways. In society, we have become. There are too many specialists and not enough generalists, right? And that's true in every field, where there are people that are so focused on their specialty they're missing the big picture of stuff. And back when my grandfather was coming up, when my father even was coming up, it was a situation where like every farmer was above adequate at every trade, right? They could weld decently. They could machine decently. They could, mechanic decently, all the kind of stuff that it took to live that near pioneer lifestyle. Right. So it was a situation where because before things were computerized, you had all these physical skills that people would have. And now like people specialize in like, one kind of engine, even in mechanics. Right. It's getting rarer and rarer to find mechanics that'll work on, whatever, right?
Yeah. Most people can't maintain their own car.
Right.
Because of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so on the one hand, societally, we need more generalists and less specialists as a society. But right? The big but. When you start dealing with that hugely nuanced areas in science, right? Like the physicist is not interchangeable with the chemist, even though when you start breaking down how chemistry and physics work, there's so much overlap, right? That it's crazy how much overlap in the math and the theory there actually is, but those are not interchangeable traits, right? And the ability, I think, and here's part of the thing is when pop culture misrepresents specialists, they actually detract. I think they retard the ability of the populace to be generalists because they don't understand the actual workings of things. And so I'm kind of both minds on the whole thing. I mean, I do, of course, I desperately want, I would not want Will Magnus to be, taking the place of Ray Palmer on some sort of side quest mission. Right.
I think it ends up doing in my view is it really diversifies how you can use these characters. It's like, as opposed to just being I'm the smart guy on the team, I can do all the smart stuff. It's like, we actually have a specialist problem. We have to reach out to our specialist friend,
right?
Which allows, it's
early in Jeff Johns' run on Justice Society, we actually had that situation where we needed, if we needed a specific type of, medical intervention, we got Doc Midnight on it because he was the medical guy. Mm-hmm. And if we needed, somebody who was going to be able to, fix a machine, Sandman is an excellent mechanic, right? We need somebody to infiltrate the, whatever. I mean, And the same thing was that's the way that Ostrander used the Suicide Squad. That's the way that so having those from a story perspective just makes it make sense. I mean, that's the entire premise of Mission Impossible, the TV series,
Right.
was playing up to those specialists, and you did have those general agents who were good at kind of a little bit of everything, but they would often in the series take back seat to the specialists for their particular 5 minutes of the show.
Yeah. You know what I was just thinking, and you mentioned Robot Man. You were thinking of the Golden Age one.
Yep.
The Silver Age one. This kind of goes into what you're talking about, specialties. The chief for the Doom Patrol built the robot body for Robot Man. It's like just being one of the world's best roboticists to achieve that. But then he never is considered a roboticist. Like, that's what he majors in. He's generally considered a big brain who can do pretty much anything. He comes up with, bandages to contain the radioactive guy. And he comes up with, he's just Mr. General Big Brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Isaac, not every episode can be about Wonder Woman. I appreciate you noticing. So, but I think from a story perspective, that idea of the specialist, I mean, I used to, find that appealing even in like old Robin Hood stories when you have the merry men, which of the merry men gets to go out on the particular story, right? Because they've got their specialties in that, and that was a factor even in medieval storytelling or late medieval storytelling. I just find it fun. I think you're right on that it definitely is something that we don't want to have one guy do everything. And that's one of the sadnesses of late age DC comics, so to speak, is where people start putting Batman in as the one guy to fix everything. Yeah. So then you get to have a Superman who's just stupid and punches stuff instead of having him being the expert on xenobiology or whatever happens to meet the criteria.
To be fair, I will say writing
Superman is already so powerful.
Right, I will say. I'm writing a team up book or story right now. They're hard, and you end up just by nature of the storytelling, typically needing to simplify things, having to simplify. You have to smooth the edges a bit to make group stories work like that. So I understand why they happen, but I do agree overall. This is why I like this story about the middlemen. Before we bury the lead too much, though, I'll give a brief synopsis for the chat of just of what going on here. So this is Action Comics, which is like a Superman's bailiwick, his one of his main lines, right? So and in this issue, we start off hovering over a chemical vat. This is such an I was struck by this being a very 80s thing, but I'll get to that in a second. The brief synopsis is the fact that in this chemical goo, as fallout from Crisis on Infinite Earths, we had to figure out what happened to Chemo, the supervillain who's a giant chemical waste contained in a giant plastic shell. And apparently he had died, essentially, it dissolved into goo. But when Crisis of Infinite Earths made one planet,
dies.
Yeah, that's true.
And when all the planets basically, when all the infinite Earths become one Earth, when Marv Wolfman simplifies the DC universe, what ends up happening is that Chemo, who was thought to have been dead, is basically shunted here into a chemical vat unknowingly. He's just a pile of chemical waste, and Superman falls into this vat. And then from there, Chemo basically copies his DNA and makes himself Chemo Superman, and then the Metal Men have to team up with Superman to stop him. That's the general gist of what's going on in this issue.
Yeah.
And
then the funny thing is, I'm going to really nerd out here. I mean, this is kind of thing that bugs me. Okay, they were fought. The Chemo took down Blue Beetle on Earth 4, so they're on the what do they call it? The group of characters that they had just purchased.
Charlton Earth, right?
Charlton, thank you. So they're on Charlton Earth. When the villains took over the 3 other Earths, they took over Shazam's Earth and Earth. It was Earth X, and Earth 4, and then they have this big battle. But then in issue 11, they go back to the dawn of time, issue 10, they go back to the dawn of time, and then Earth is rewritten. And so there's this whole new history. Obviously, the whole thing where they took over 3 other Earths never happened. So how did Chemo even get destroyed? He didn't go back to the beginning of time. He's not one of the people hanging over. So it's kind of weird. It's like, what is his story now?
I think the story was that he essentially, it's almost like he slipped through the cracks. I think the impression I got was that his literal chemical remains have essentially were carried over as like detritus from these Earths, and so he just ends up here. It's not even weird.
And this is okay. And so this is one of the things with the Crisis that wasn't handled well. Okay, guys. So the Marv Wolfman story, the quote unquote official story, is that all of Earth's history was rewritten from the dawn of time.
Right.
But some big writers got to stick their cards in the deck as it was shuffling. Right? And so over at All-Star Squadron, over with Roy Thomas said, no, I'm putting a finger in All-Star Squadron. We're ending the book at the Crisis. We're picking up the next month with Young All-Stars. All of these events happened before the time jump because this is when I wrote it. So I'm going to write All-Star Squadron assuming these previous events that happened. Right? And so the replacement characters that he introduces, that Thomas introduces, don't have a history before February. No, it's May 1942. Right? So that means that you're looking at a year and a half where there's no Wonder Woman, because there was a Wonder Woman and then there was the Fury, and likewise there's no Superman like for the rest of DC writers, right? And so I left all these.
That's always bizarre when they do that, because they're doing this now, right? Where they have to they create a golden age for Superman to be like, wow, those were the old superheroes, and it's like Superman literally predates all of them.
Yeah,
but he's reacting to them as if they came before him,
right?
And that's always been an interesting little. I understand why it happens, but it's just always funny to me because it's like it's literally like.
Right, exactly, and so that's
my
one
own
of those things
grandpa.
where so some of the writers and editors, again, they got to put their cards in the deck as reshuffled, and Byrne uses this to sneak Chemo back into continuity.
I'm okay with it. Honestly, like it's Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of those things where it's like, I've created the new status quo, sure, whatever, it's comics. You're gonna have stuff like this, and this allows Chemo to not be like, this allows them to skip to Chemo being in the story without having to like recreate him from scratch.
right.
This is nice. They don't have to do a re-origin. Like they do a recap very briefly. It's like 2 pages of flashback. We'll get to that because that's actually there's that exchange I actually really want to talk about.
Right.
But before we get to that,
I want to say one thing about the in-story explanation, because there's the origin of Chemo in-story explanation, but there's also the in-story explanation of this giant vat of chemicals, right? And I thought this was so fun.
I was just about to mention that. Yeah,
this company gets a contract to clean up sludge in the ocean, and so they pump all of the sludge in the ocean into these giant vats, and they're going to chemically filter, like extract all of these useful chemicals out of it. And Lois Lane and Clark Kent are touring this new state-of-the-art facility, and Lois Lane jumps down this guy's throat for the toxic waste. Like, did you want me to leave it in the ocean?
Yeah. They have to make her a crusader. That's just all, It's
I mean, I don't mind that part of Lois, but her like thought process here is a lot like,
Yeah.
There's the through line to it. They're a chemical company largely. That's kind of the thing I think is interesting is that this is very 80s in that sense, which is like, it's very focused on that type of environmentalism. So again, it's interesting in the sense that this is an artifact of that time. And the thing that I think is funnier from the position of the story is that Clark whoopsie doodle slips in, and which is a detail I thought was going to be brought up at some point, because the looks that the plant manager is giving, it was almost like, was this planned? But that's neither here nor there. But it's funny because the guy, like, this guy basically falls into a vat of chemical waste, and just the look at that panel right there. No, scroll down.
He should be dead.
That one right there. Yeah, exactly. The guy should be dead. The look on this guy's face as he's like, okay, resuming tour, and it's like, you should be taking this guy straight to the medical wing and calling your attorneys immediately because of the lawsuits that are coming.
And this guy's shower.
This guy isn't dead yet. Maybe he won't let OSHA
Except
know.
for one thing, this is a superhero universe. Nobody falls into a vat of toxic waste and dies. They fall into a vat of toxic waste and
become the Joker.
She says that. She says you'd better get that washed off.
Yeah. Turtle, which is a wonderful deep cut to Jimmy Olsen. But what I love here is just that Byrn's just look on that guy's face is he's just like, yeah, whatever, moving on. And that cracked me up. But so it's very much a story of the 80s, with very eco. It's very because back in the golden age, they would just have these vats all over the stories, and they wouldn't say boo about it. But it's the 80s, so now we have to say something about it.
Well, the other thing that's crazy about this, it's so 80s and so coastal 80s, right? The idea that a company can't be doing something for money that is also a good thing to be doing, right? Mm-hmm. As if these guys weren't, out there buying groceries at the grocery store.
I'm okay with them. Like, I'm anti-corporate enough that, like, this was the time where we started gaining a little more consciousness towards companies that needed to be pushed back against for, thoughtlessly. We still have some of this today.
That's the narrative. That's the narrative. I don't think that's actually the truth. There's been anti-corporate activism before there were corporations.
No, I'm aware. My point though is the fact that there this was definitely a point of pop culture awareness towards, hey, there are some companies, not all, but there are definitely some companies that do rape Mother Earth and need to be called out on it, and that's what John Byrne is alluding to here. But he's also but what's neat is that they it's used as a character moment to make Lois Lane what she always is, which is a bit of a stick up your butt. She's been that way since 1938. So it's a character moment for her. It's updated for the 80s, and they don't really do that much with it afterwards, which modern comics would just keep ringing the gong on it. Here they use it, they make a little nod to it, and then they understand that the story is meant to be about Chemo being a giant goo monster, and they move on with that. So I like.
Yes. Definitely appreciate that.
There's a nod to it, and then Byrne moves on, which is what they should do now. And
then we have our great little the extra story background to Chemo.
So I hate to do this again, but I have to interject. This is the thing I wanted to talk about that wasn't the Metal Men.
Yes,
I'm trying to do this in my comics as well. But one of the things that made this comic so cozy was its narrative voice. 2 solid pages of narration. Comics have narrated for a very long time, up until somewhere in like the 2000s, I think, is where they really started dropping a lot of the narrative in terms of just having a narrator. And having a narrator means you have a storyteller. What's interesting thing about this with comics is the fact that when you peel away the narrator, you change the balance of who's the storyteller. Back in the Golden and Silver Ages, we'll take Silver Ages as a great example of this, because you had Stan Lee, who was just all over it. He had a narrative voice that was so strong you could hear his accent through it. And when you remove all of that, you give it's very postmodern in the fact that you imply that there is no storyteller. The storyteller is just whoever happens to just pick up the book. It's very filmic and cinematic, right? But for many years, comics had a narrative voice, and it had this idea that there was kind of a storyteller who would be poking his head in from time to time, sometimes maybe too much. But this was the era of both Chris Claremont and John Byrne, sometimes working together, sometimes not, that gave us some of the most memorable storylines that we've ever had. Things like the Phoenix Saga, things like the Superman Man of Steel run. And so this era, having the narration and the storytelling that it did, is aging like a fine wine. It is something that people are continuing to come back to and say, this is some of the best moments in comics we've ever had, both in Marvel and DC. And some of it boils down to the fact that there is... and what Byrne does is he doesn't do the whole thing, but there's a couple times where he peels back the narration, just lets the story tell itself. But this comic both shows and tells. And that's something that's important, I think, in comics. Comics aren't just about showing; they're about showing and telling, and having a storyteller kind of guiding the reading here and there. I think helps in many cases. It sets the table and it sets the expectations for what's about to happen. And it allows us to kind of not just have to figure out all the pieces ourselves. And then some of that's because they're targeted at a younger audience at times. You have Jim Shooter who's saying, hey, any of these comics could be someone's first comic. So some of it is just very utilitarian. But I would say overall, in addition to it having a practical use, having narration, there are very, and the reason why I say this is because there are classic books for years, Dickens, and a host of others who narrated, who were, I am the storyteller. I'm telling you a piece of fiction, but there's going to be a storyteller, and I'm not necessarily a character inside the narrative, but I have a character in the sense that I'm not just you. I'm not just the voice of you, the reader, reading this. And so one of the things I found so cozy about this was the usage of narration in this comic. It's something that comics have lost largely. It has been almost completely stripped away from modern comics. And I think it is something that should come back more often than what is here now, than what we see in contemporary. I love contemporary comics too, by the way. I'm just saying that we need more of this. This is a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
Get this narration of what's going on with Chemo's cells. You know, this... modern parlance would either have this be a scene where some scientist has to just blather on or whatever, but here just seeing the stuff happen and then have that narrative voice. Some people might look at that and say that's too many captions, but I read this and it was just engaging, and and having that storyteller tell me what's going on made me anticipate what was about to happen. It was like, oh, he's cloning Superman. Oh, we're in trouble now.
Yeah.
And the storytellers doing that set the table and set the expectations for me to go, ooh, now I'm interested in it and invested. And so that experience in comics is something that we had during this period. It's a period that has been universally acknowledged as being one of the best, with some of these being some of the best creators, Byrne and, like I said, Claremont and others. So I really wanted to highlight, this has nothing to do with Metal Men, but in this Metal Men issue, we had some just fantastic structural elements of comic storytelling that I just read this and I was taking notes, and I've been adding more narration into my Omega Girl comics as a result of reading stuff like this.
Yeah, look how efficient it is. Like you say, you'd have to come up with some other way to convey this, usually through a dialogue exchange, which is going to be far more cumbersome than his being able to just go through here and say what's happened. And sometimes the narrator could fill in things that would, explain why, to the reader. They might wonder, why is this person going in there? And just one little sentence you throw in, it explains it. And you don't have to come up with a conversational way to convey all of this, because that is where you end up getting the really klutzy introductions and things like that. So, where people come in and they say their full name, or they address somebody else by their full name, or they, that sort of stuff. It's nice having the ability to just concisely introduce people or explain something and not have to come up with a whole way to work it into the story.
And those can affect tone so much too, right? Well, so like when this device was used in Scott Pilgrim, for example, which we all read, right? One of the things that did is it gave this irreverent, punchy, post structuralist, garage band kind of feel to the work, right? Where it put it in flippantly and silly and fun and all that kind of stuff, right? Very Joss Whedon in form, right? But here we have this more grandiose voice that's being used, and it's not overbearing, it's not pushy, it's not uncomfortable, but it does give you the action story.
It's taken very seriously. It's treating the material seriously,
and it's treating the material seriously, and it also has that pulp, like it's a little bit pulpy, it's a little bit film serial, right? Action adventure serials. It's got all the stuff that built into the tone of the superhero comic book is being used in that same way because Byrne writes in that register, and so it brings you right into it in a way where you could almost hear the man speaking the narration, right? And it's enjoyable. It's fun, right? So I love it. I love this. I'm glad you pointed that out. I wouldn't have thought to point it out in that way at all, but I'm really glad you did because I wholeheartedly agree. Well, and side note, this goes back to something we were talking about the other week, Twitless, when you were saying these old books from the 70s. I see why you like them. Right?
Yeah. you mentioned it to being cozy, like cozying up to a warm fire, and this is part of why I think this is why I think it's cozy. And I think part of it is there's a storyteller, and he is not. It's not just we're not just given this, and this is the reason why comics post Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and X-Men, that early 2000s, right? Well, it was like, these are movies, and then people started watching the movies and then writing comics based on. And I say that because I started doing it. I started writing comics that way.
Yeah.
I
think that I don't think you're wrong at all, but I think that trend started sooner than you're really giving it necessarily credit for here, because I remember very often people being interviewed by Wizard would say back in the mid 90s, they would say, well, this is how I would tell a movie if I was doing it. Or cinematic storytelling became a buzzword.
But there was still, that may be true. Maybe the seed started there, but you pull out Spawn issue 1, there's a chunk of narration in it. Right. So there's still
And because McFarlane was an old comic book guy, but I'm thinking you look in DC, right, in Batman specifically, when Chuck left and Greg Rucka became the Batman writer, and Batman stopped reading like a comic in a lot of ways. Rucka still told great stories. I don't dislike them, but they didn't have the same kind of old school visceral comic booky feel to them. And that was true in Superman. That was happening, and of course this is 99, 98, somewhere in there. When Jeff Johns came on, I mean, they hired, DC specifically hired a crop of 5 or 7 screenwriters to become their flagship writers for DC Comics.
What you were saying is right around the 2000s, though, which is more or less where I'm falling on it. So it's interesting, and again, like I said, there's still great stories, but there is something about the storytelling I really like. It's very cozy, and I'm trying. Like I said, I'm starting to put more and more of it in my own work. But back to Metal Men. This is the setup. This is the setup so that the Metal Men have someone really interesting to fight. And so 2 pages of narration essentially to catch everyone up to speed. Very effective page usage. I was engaged. I was invested. I'm ready to get down into it. And then a little bit more narration to set the scene here, and then we get. Then Byrne steps back from storytelling and lets the scene tell itself. So he doesn't do like what some Golden Age comics would do, which was to narrate every single page and panel. He's doing a little bit of a dance. It's like, I'm going to narratively storytell a bit, and then I'm going to, once I've set the scene, let the scene tell itself.
And let the action within the panel move you through the panels, as opposed to the narrative doing it on the previous pages. And it's such a great balance that he pulls. But anyway, back to this thing. So we introduced to Magnus, we're introduced to the Metal Men, to Tin here, and to Platinum, and we have the unwanted affection. And man,
Byrn
Magnus
makes her.
just
Byrn makes her. Byrn's a very good artist.
yes,
That's all I'm gonna say.
yeah. But here's the thing: is so crazy is Magnus is just from the jump. He's so angry.
Yeah.
He's just like, "Oh, you stupid robots! Why did I ever build you?" And I'm just like,
So, actually, I have a question for Hutch. So, at this
Mhm.
point, since this is the reintroduction,
Yeah.
something Byrn did that I thought was good was he kind of makes it feel like there's a lot more story to this. But since this is essentially their first introduction, why is he so mad at them at this point?
Well, you could kind of tell he doesn't like. He's never been happy with the way that they have personalities, and I don't really understand it because supposedly he programmed them. But I think that the responsometer gives them personalities a lot more than he intended. It's sort of out of his control. And he's kind of like God, and humanity is not supposed to go touch that tree and eat that fruit, and it did, and he's like, now he has to deal with these. It's sort of like that. He's
Okay.
well, and that's one thing is when their personalities are less predictable, and so they keep. One of the things he talks about later on is you guys are like children. You always do what you want, and then expect me to clean up after you.
Right. And they keep getting destroyed, and he's always rebuilding them, and it sounds like he's tired of doing it, but it's also that ties into the later explanation that supposedly these are real people's personalities that have been transferred into the robots, which is what that 1994 miniseries did. And I'm not happy with that at all, of course. And that that went away. But but it is kind of weird. It's like you wouldn't program a robot to be dumb or to have a stutter or to feel inadequate or to think that she's really sexy and has sexual desires for the guy. And, all these things that he wouldn't have made them like that. But Led is like,
I don't know.
let's see. So it's dense. And he looks up dense. It also means stupid. And he's like, I guess I'm stupid. And it's like, he's going through the cultural assessment of what Led is. And she's kind of looked up platinum blondes and has adopted a Marilyn Monroe type personality, and that sort of thing. It's like this is not the way he necessarily programmed them from the very beginning, but he keeps thinking that they've grown out of control.
It's the artist as a discoverer, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that part. Yeah, I get that. I think it was the degree of his response seems so strong for an intro for him
Yeah.
for these characters. It really felt like I'm missing a page, which is fun, which in a way is effective in the sense that it draws you in a bit.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I was like, man, he really has. It's almost like too much.
Yeah,
How
well,
upset he
they're
is.
trying to build up to why did he come out of Sub-Basement 9 and what's in there. They're really trying to make him seem out of sorts because they're trying to drive the mystery towards that, which is, they do that in these 2 episodes and they don't really, or installments, and they don't really get to it. Then it takes another 6 years to happen.
Really?
And they
So
finally address, what's that?
We're sitting on the Sub-Basement 9 for 6 years.
6 years, and in that time
Wow.
it becomes Sub-Basement 13 somehow. But when it actually happens, but by the way, you notice that Mercury says you can go ahead and sweat. It's like he's not sweating, but this is how human they are. It's like the way they talk.
Well, I was pointing out metal can't sweat.
Right, and
well,
for
that's
that
actually
point,
not true.
you can't build your muscles by weightlifting. So
They're acting very human. That is true.
they're acting almost too human sometimes. Yeah, and that's like
It's almost as if they were written and created by humans.
yeah.
I like them this way though. If they just acted like robots, they'd be really dull. The fact that they act like people is endearing, and it makes me like them.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to make a ton of sense. I'm fine.
Even the fact that Mercury is red instead of silver, it's like he knows that the humans have this idea of Mercury mainly from being in a thermometer and it's red, but it's not. The stuff in the thermometer is not mercury anymore. But he kind of adopts this red color because that's what humans expect. In the same way humans expect lead to be thick, and they expect tin. They think of tin like tin cans. It's kind of thin and cheap. And so they all have their personalities kind of driven by human assessments of these metals. Iron's strong, so he's the big strong man. and he's kind of quiet and aloof, and they're all drawn from our human appraisals of these metals or terms for these metals. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah. Now we're on to super chemo.
Super chemo.
I scroll past that scene just because there's a lot of relationship building. There's a lot of character development in that stuff.
Yeah.
But even with that, it's a good place for them. I think Byrne did a great job explicating their interactions there, and then we get to see them in action, which is pretty much the rest of the story. The whole book is just action, 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 which is perfect because we're reading action comics. So now it took me a while to notice this when I was reading it, but Platinum isn't the bright silver anymore. She's like this slightly yellow color, and that's important later. But yeah, we have Chemo as Superman is running around, right? And he's got Superman-like powers, and nobody get it. I love this. Iron goes, I can solve him. He turns himself into a giant pointer, and he bounces off Superman's boot. Because he's Superman is Chemo is manifesting Superman's powers one at a time by altering his chemical composition in line with the Superman cells that he absorbed earlier, and I just that was so much fun.
That's a good issue. It's a good issue. It's nice. It takes something that very Silver Agey and brings it in and makes it very cozy in the Bronze Age. And I was lapping it up.
It was great. I also love this design of this Megazord airplane that they.
Well, I want to talk about the art for a second, because now I know this. When I first started reading this, I knew this was an old comic, but I also knew it would probably be younger than it looked to me.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, 80s. But
1981. I think.
That's the thing, right? It's like all comics kind of had these.
This is 86 or 87.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it? I thought it was.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, John Byrne took over in 86. So, yeah, this is 87 at the time.
Of the panel in a comic this old. I kept looking to see throughout the rest of the book if I'd find this again. It seems to be very unique.
The miscoloring.
1981 is the P.O. box number. Okay. Sorry. I was reading the wrong. I read 1981 on the issue because I was trying to date it earlier.
Can I point out the next panel? The very next panel is actually a very much discussed panel. Superman talks about the fact that he hasn't had much to do, and he would actually be gaining weight if his body didn't efficiently process 100% of the food he eats, which means that he does not poop. that was, boy, that sure got a lot of discussion.
I'm sure it did. Yeah. Just because he says 100% does not mean it's physically 100%. Oh my gosh, you're flashbacking me to Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex.
That is. Believe me, the letters 4 months later.
I bet.
On that panel.
I bet.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But so we have a Superman flying along, not a care in the world, just chilling. He just rolling out in the sky by himself, thinking about what a good life he's got. And then this giant 50-foot tall, 40-foot tall clone of him flies the other way, King Konging this robot.
You're allowed one coincidence per comic book, and boy, that is one.
Got the rule. The rule is one coincidence.
I mean, that's a really big Superman clone. It's hard to not to see it.
You know what? I can't get over the fact. Again, this is just, I think, because John Byrne is such a natural artist that there are so many ways you could have done Superman Chemo and made it look retarded and make it look just not. This is what I love about this period, is that they were taking concepts that in other hands would have been stupid, but they treat it 100% seriously, believed in it 100%, and Byrne treats it in a way that I completely believe this, both narratively and artistically.
Well, and it doesn't rob it of any of the fun, right? Like the part of the reason it would be cheesy is it seems like a silly idea, right?
Well,
But
Chemo
because
has
they
a
believe in
costume
the
and a
idea-
cape. Why does he have a costume and a cape if he replicated cells? You know,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
just
Wait
buy
a minute,
it. We
you're
don't
right.
even think about it.
Yep.
Which
Well,
I'm fine. Which I'm absolutely fine. Again,
Yeah.
it somehow works. That super cape with all its lines on it, I believe it. I think John Byrne is selling the ideas really hard. He's
well,
not the only artist
that's
who can
part
do
of it
this,
is
but I'm
by-
just saying that he does a good job.
Yeah, but part of what I was saying is that because he's taking it 100% seriously, like all of the silly fun is intact. It doesn't become some sort of eye roll where it's just like, right?
Yeah, modern comics would have made at least 2 jokes at this
Yeah,
point.
and you don't need jokes because it's funny and silly enough on its own that the seriousness is the joke, but it's still like, but it's still serious, right? And that's those things. It's a kind of humor that we don't have anymore because everybody's trying to write comedy.
Bad comedy. I'm fine with. I don't know if I guess there is some humor you can derive from it, but I just was so invested in the story. I don't even see that. That's what I'm saying. It's like the story is so good at conveying its action adventure that you don't even notice some of these things until you're starting to analyze it and pick it apart. Which means that on its first initial viewing, it's casting the illusion very effectively. And I don't know. It just, like I said, I just another testament, just Byrne's narrative storytelling art abilities.
So in the story, we see that they actually explain that the reason that titanium is yellow is because she's covered in a plastic film that's keeping her metallic shape-shifting powers
Platinum.
at play.
Yeah.
Right? Platinum. I said that. What did I say?
Titanium.
But it's
Titanium.
platinum. Yeah. It's
Whatever.
okay.
It's
Yeah.
I said it wrong.
Isn't
Everything-
titanium like one of
Titania? Yeah.
Isn't titanium like one of the evil metal men or something when they try to do evil metals or something?
I don't know.
I think so. I think you're right.
Titanium has a black net color to it.
So, but anyway, so that's that, and he's saved, and Superman tries to figure out how to fight him, and this is great. The metal men come together, and it's, what do they say? It's formulation what now? 21, number 21.
And
And
all
they
I
hold-
could think of was, and
I
I'll
was just-
form the head.
Yeah, right.
Well,
And
that becomes a plot point actually in like 2 panels because Mercury doesn't like being the leg.
Yeah. Why would
And
why would he even function as a leg given that he's liquid? It just whenever they form into a shape, it's always weird that Mercury has any ability whatsoever to work as a metal. It's just you just accept it,
Well, in order
Yeah,
to
you
stretch, they must all have control over the.
They get to that in
reality.
599 is where Byrne creates. He unsilifies it, which is actually really cool.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where like Hutch, one of the things that comes to is like that happens so the story can happen.
That's right. Yeah.
Like a little from the pitch meeting. They have that, so we have a comic.
So
You
so
do
the
realize,
movie can.
please, I just want to point out, you do
So
realize
the movie can happen.
what that exact sentence is the entirety of the Justice League movie. Okay.
So the
yeah.
movie can happen.
Obviously.
I just
But-
noticed he said "Great Scott." I didn't know that he still said "Great Scott" in John Byrne's version of him, because
Well,
he
now
does kind of
Great
add.
Scott at all.
I mean, Superman kind of says "damn" and "hell" like normal.
Yeah, he works more of that in there.
Yeah, but he actually does. He thinks "Great Scott." Wow.
What I think Byrne does, which I
Yeah.
kind of like, is that when Superman throws out one of those words, so like his default is the country boy from Kansas.
Yeah.
If he says hell, it's like I'm fighting Darkseid, or Luthor has done something like really bad.
Yeah.
Assault was it? What was the Man of
He
Steel?
assaulted Lana Lang.
Lana Lang,
and she was all
yeah.
bloody, and he said,
Yeah,
"Damn you, Luthor." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that.
Yeah.
But that was like, it had to be like that was like domestic assault. It was like you domestic assaulted my best friend from
Right.
childhood. So that was like the rare moment I'm going to drop a word I wouldn't normally say.
The crypto scene in Superman's new movie this year was an exact copy of that
gosh.
scene from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
that was clearly what they were channeling when they tried it. It doesn't work the same way, but it was okay.
Yeah.
I knew what they were going for.
Yeah,
That was exactly the panel I thought of. Yeah,
definitely. In fairness to that I've known many Puritan leaning farmers that have that pretty much that attitude towards swearing.
Yeah.
So.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that having it be that way, where he is gonna use the more golly or gosh, means you can read his personality a little better, which is good character writing. If everyone's just, this is one of the big gripes I have with a type of contemporary writing that's often associated with millennials, where it's just like dropping the F word constantly. There's just no nuance anymore. It's just a string of expletives. Whereas here, you can tell how seriously Superman's taking it seriously, but like it's when it gets personal that he drops a, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
well, and
like
that's,
that kind of.
That's actually one of those things where, to speak, to zoom out from the comic a little bit, an old expression, that the so and so wouldn't give a tinker's damn, or or a Dutchman's damn, right? Either one of those expressions. The idea is that this particular person or kind of person swears so often it doesn't mean nothing.
Right? My mom has never sworn in her life. She doesn't say damn. She doesn't say hell. She doesn't even use God. She says gosh. It's like, if she ever did say damn, you would know that you have pushed her to her limit. And the fact that I've never heard her do it means she keeps pretty calm. But it's kind of, that means something. Whereas when I was watching the movie Knocked Up, I don't know if you've seen it. Knocked Up is kind of a lot of improv, and it's an improv by an actor who swears a lot. Oh. And the movie, it kind of works up to this. For those of you who haven't seen it, Seth Rogen is the main character, and he's kind of trying to be a dad, whereas he's mainly just a druggy single guy who bums around with all his other bachelor buddies. But he got a woman pregnant. He's stepping up as a dad, and they kind of signify it by that when his doctor is like on vacation when the baby is coming, he records a big irate, foul-mouthed message to this doctor, which would mean something if he wasn't talking like that all the time throughout the movie. Right. He talks like that to his dad in a public restaurant. Right. It means nothing.
It means nothing. That's the exact problem with Deadpool.
And really, this is a principle outside just language too. When a character does something out of their normal, character expectations, it can very easily mean that things have gone down, right? To push them into that.
Right. But if they're always acting like that, then it just waters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It makes it meaningless. There is, unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to get to it, there's a very unfortunate panel in this comic. I don't know if that's just because of modern internet degeneracy or what, but there's a panel, and if we scroll past it, you'll know.
Platinum is falling through the sky and her legs are... No, okay.
No, it's not that one. There is a much worse one. It's coming up.
Okay.
I apparently did not notice it.
There it is.
Yeah.
What is
I am not going to say it, but everyone in chat is going to know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Can you at least tell me what page so I'm not split between two?
I'm not going to say anything.
Anyhow.
Oh, he's spraying himself out of the plastic coating? Is that it? I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
That's good. You guys are of a pure generation. I grew up on the internet too much, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, they're able to chemo sprays the whole lot of the metal men with the plastic goops that can't transform, and then Mercury, because he can be liquid at room temperature, finds a way to extract himself after knocking everybody down.
Which he keeps reminding us every chance he gets.
Yeah, it's because he's an egotist. I do want to say though that
but it does work. You gotta give him credit. It's he is problem solving.
He is problem solving, and it works out really well. I also love that that it's this fight moves along so quick. It seemed like a lot longer when I was reading it, as far as all the stuff that's happening in it. But
is it those two panels? The chemo blowing the stuff and he's covered in goo. Is that it?
I don't think he's gonna tell us.
I guess not.
I'll do it after the show. I don't want to do it.
Okay.
Anyway,
family friendly.
Once
put it in chat what you think it is, folks.
Yeah.
Once Mercury escapes, Tin figures out that he can escape, and then he tries to turn him. They're trying to use Superman's power of the sun, so they're going to try to black chemo out, which sort of works, but then it doesn't because Tin has become too thin. So rest the metal men.
Can anyone explain what actually happens in that panel, though?
Which one?
What does he do to burst through Tin?
I think he just like flexes.
It's kind of
chemo is a one thing that this comic I think could have sold maybe a little bit. I think this comic's perfect, but one thing that maybe a little unclear. Chemo is a powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like that shell, they call it plastic. It's like he can go toe to toe with Superman for a bit. Superman would eventually, I think, crack through it, but like it would take more than one hit. Like chemo is he's a big boss kind of. He's not intelligent. Yeah, he's not intelligent, but like if he does crack that shell, this is what happens in I think it's Under the Red Hood. They use him as like they use him to nuke Bloodhaven.
Yeah,
Like he is of a tier of like I'm weapon of mass destruction. So like if he's huge, so like you know he could easily snap one of the metal men if they're not being careful, which is what happens.
But
obviously, by the fact that it's emanating from his face, it's kind of implied that he emitted chemicals
some
against
energy
him.
blast, right?
Yeah, well, he emits acids all the time, so I took it for that. But yeah, he's gone all liquid. Notice, so chemo kind of liquefied him, I guess. But
and so then we have the metal men form a dome. Superman then uses his super heat to heat him up to the point where he ruptures his own skin. Which is
It took me a second
horrifying.
to realize that Superman himself was in that same dome.
It's all the blackness.
No, it's when they make the bigger dome, not the smaller one. The smaller thing.
He addresses it in his mind that he's cut off from the sun, but it would take him days.
Right, that's when I realized
darkness.
that's what was going on.
Yeah. But chemo's just copying.
Wait a minute, how can any of them see in there?
Well, the comic book can happen.
No. Superman has like he tells he's using his X-ray. He has heat vision. It's creating light. It's fine.
Also, they're on top of a bunch of cars that have their headlights on.
Now that I did find funny that we actually get to see it. It's like sitting on what must be a whole bunch of people being like, "What the heck?"
Yeah. They don't try to get him away from the highway before doing this. That's kind of weird, but
right.
Like we say, it's comic book fun. You know, it's not.
And I love that. Superman here. He's using his heat vision to turn him to sublimate chemo, and then he uses his ice vision to turn him into to freeze him, and then to shatter him into a million pieces. So then we have this great scene where they're like, "Oh, we can go. Oh no, Tin's dead. No, that's fine. We'll pick him up, and Doc Magnus will fix him." And Doc Magnus says, "Screw you, pal. I'm done fixing."
Which is, like I said, I just wish that we had a little more context here because it's like, I'm done fixing you, and it's like, this is their introduction. I'd understand this if it'd be like there were 2 other instances where this happened, but it's like it feels like there's a story we didn't. There's the extent that I'm invested because there's a story I don't have, but there's also a sense of like, you could give me a little more here.
Yeah, they really have not been seen. I mean, aside from little panels here and there in the Crisis on Infinite Earths, they were not seen since that Brave and the Bold story where Tin got married. You know, that 17-page story that we've talked about before, and that was it. And this is their first time in years that they've been seen and really given a focus. So you're right; it is to a new generation of kids who just came along and started reading after Crisis. This is their introduction to it, and it is kind of off-putting, I guess. Yeah, if you don't know Will Magnus and his grumpiness. We lost Matt again.
Yeah.
Well, especially also because you might just be thinking Tin is dead forever. Like
Yeah.
they just came in here and they killed one of their characters off, right?
Yeah, well, that happens to the Mum like once an issue.
Yeah. Well, it ends with a
But
big teaser. It
He's
says
talking about
curious,
people who would be
confused.
coming in for the first time, right?
Yeah. But they're trying to get you to say, hey, can we see more of the Metalmen? Because it says
Right.
curious, confused. What are the dark secrets of Sublevel 9 and the fate of the Metalmen will be revealed? Keep
In 6
your eyes
years.
for future announcements. Well, no, because it's this next
9
story, but
episodes
yeah,
from
but
now.
then 6 years. You could tell it wasn't supposed to be 6 years. I think John Byrne intended to do this, and then John Byrne he left after the end of 2 years writing Superman, and he left DC. I mean, I don't know the details of his life, but I know he was a little dissatisfied in some ways with the way DC was handling Superman, and he didn't just drop Superman, not be the guy on Superman anymore. We didn't see him at DC Comics doing anything. So that's probably what happened to the Metalmen that he was supposed to write and draw.
Yep.
And I would have loved to have seen it. I really would. But
and you know, one of the benefit things that happened because of that, he left DC, he went back over to Marvel and did one heck of a Namor run. I don't know that anybody has written better Namor other than Bill Everett than John Byrne's Namor. It's so good. I enjoyed the absolute heck out of that. So anyway, we're not here to talk about Namor.
It's okay. It's okay.
I do want to talk about one thing, and that is how Superman is accidentally portrayed in this issue.
Okay.
The previous issue, not this one. Is although I think it probably happened somewhere. This isn't an age when they're, all that narration they're doing, a lot of it shows up in the form of a word bubble. And it tends to annoy me when characters, they're basically babying the audience, making sure they hold our hands. I think they're afraid of us getting confused as to why Superman couldn't just do this, that, and the other thing, right? And so they're desperate to make sure that we know absolutely everything that's going through their minds. And this often shows up in the form of word bubbles. These characters end up thinking things, and I'm like, who are you talking to? Right?
Oh no, you're gonna get me defending that is necessary. I'll give you a couple of reasons why.
Oh, I hate it. But you don't need to, because what's the point here is how the two end up coming together. On one hand, they're making sure they have to explain everything. On the other hand, they're putting it in a word bubble. So every time Superman has to think to himself about how I could have done something on my own, or, his powers will fade, but mine won't. There are like 8 or 9 times this happens, and it makes him accidentally seem like he's got the world's biggest ego. Right? He's like just thinking to himself about how I totally could have handled that, but it's a good thing.
I completely disagree. It's entirely necessary. It's entirely necessary to establish a few things, and one of them is how the character is, where his attitude is in the moment. If Superman is thinking about a dozen different, because Superman has like 100 powers. It's almost like, which one do I use to solve the problem? And if Superman is thinking about this in a particular way, you get a feeling. This is another reason why Reese said this story was so cozy. It's also why the next story is cozy in one way, but a little more the stakes go up. Because Superman no longer is thinking as much about the half dozen ways he can solve the problem in a sort of a lighthearted adventure that still has stakes and need to take it seriously. You get a version of the tone. This is very important for comics to both show and tell. If you remove this stuff, okay, if you remove all those thought balloons, we don't get to see what Superman is thinking. You just see him doing things. This is the cinematic storytelling I was just talking about. It removes a metric ton of personality from these stories when you do that. And also, what it does is something that manga and anime do and have done when they copied American superhero comics.
Yep.
And now they do it, and now we're starting to like relearn lessons from them that we taught them. But which is a wonderful little character arc. But it's necessary because half of the fun of reading these stories, I mean not half, but a chunk of the fun is thinking about these things, because little boys and men love to theory craft, whether they're playing video games or thinking about their favorite fictional characters. We love to think about, we love to problem solve with cool powers and abilities, and Superman is always doing this in his head, and it makes it lets us join him along the ride for that. If he's just doing it, we don't get to be a part of his thought process, and it makes it actually makes us less invested in him as a character.
And it's not just little boys either. I mean, little girls have the same kind of inner life. It's just it's not necessarily pointed in the same ends, right? So that's why like romance comics can work really well, is because you can peer into the inner life of the character as they're thinking through their, entanglements.
Right.
And it allows
my point is that this is not just about Superman. If you pick up Spider-Man or anything else that the X-Men that Claremont is doing at the same time, you're going to see the same, and if in case of Claremont, even more. And these runs are considered to be some of the best, if not the best, that ever existed. And there's a reason for that, and it's because these storytelling techniques are not a weakness. That's one of the things that is the lesson that we need to unlearn in modern comics, in my opinion. These were not weaknesses; these were strengths.
Yeah,
comics were better when we did this,
and it doesn't have to have that. And that's one of the things I think is one of the things that's great about comics is a comic doesn't have a narrative, right? But some should, right? It is a shame to remove that voice from comics in toto. In the same way
sure, not
overdo the narration, right?
That's true. No, I think I've been pushing so hard for narration that there's clearly places I've laughed when Claremont has gone overboard, and he does, and there's Golden Age comics that go overboard. I'm not saying that you can't overdo it, but I really think that if you removed all those moments, I think I would like Superman less. I think I like him more because I'm in his head and he's thinking about all the different ways he could theory craft to beat up that guy, which is what boys love to do. How could these two superhero characters beat each other up? It is half the fun of why people read superhero comics. It's why all the letters and forums were all filled to the brim with how these people were going to be theory crafting how their powers would interact with each other, and they were always thinking about it. And like I said, I don't think that's a weakness. I really think it's a strength, and I think that what we substituted instead in modern comics is a lot of cringe humor. So they would just banter constantly when that was just Spider-Man's thing, while at the same time he was doing something else in his head. So it's I don't know, like I said, I think.
And that's one of those things too, where if you look at like some team, like specifically, I'm thinking about Young Justice, Peter David's Young Justice, right? You had a lot of banter and silliness that went into that book, but Peter David was the guy who had the skill to balance the seriousness and the silly, and it didn't, neither took away from the other. And like that's a difficult like square to circle to square, whatever, right? It's but I think that's anyway. That's a side note. Sorry,
I'm just saying that the more I read this, the more I grow to appreciate all of this particular style. I know that it may not be for everyone, and that's fair. But I think that we need more of this. I think that comics. I think one of the reasons why modern comics are not failing. I think that sometimes they fail because they're trying to be movies by competing with how movies do their storytelling. And the problem is that if you try to compete with a film while you are handicapped by the panels, then you're never going to win, because movies will just do it better than you every time. If you play into your strengths, which is the fact that you can do things that movies just either won't or can't do, and some of it just won't, But if they won't do it, but you will, then you're providing a storytelling technique that's unique, that you can only get by reading the comic. And that means that you have to read the comic, and that there's something unique about reading the comic as opposed to, well, I'd rather just see this on the big screen.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that explains some of what we see in the industry. People keep chasing the film, and films are great. But if you try to compete with them while being a comic, and you're competing in their neighborhood, you'll never win. You have to compete in your neighborhood. And so I think I think this period is really good at competing in its own neighborhood. It knows what comics do well. So anyway,
Yeah.
I've belabored the point enough.
I like that Superman is thinking, and you can see his thoughts, because without that, you can get the idea that he's just a big, strong lummox and is nothing compared to Batman, 'cause, like, he's not a thinking man's person, and you can see that he's like, right away when they do the dome, he says, okay, he is getting weak, so he doesn't have the battery like I have, where I could be covered by blackness that would take me weeks before I'd lose my powers. And that's good that he says that, because readers would be like, well, why is he, if we don't get that explanation, that's the first thing people would write in about, with their questions.
Right, and there's a lot of superhero comic readers are the ones who are going to be theory crafting. At least I think some people theory craft too much, and some writers
he doesn't poop.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but I think there's a healthy balance with the theory crafting elements to it. But you have to be you have to, these people who were writing these stories, Byrne and company, knew that they were playing in that sandbox, and that if they had to play to that aspect of the audience, which, like I said, the letter columns are always filled with, these tidbits.
Yeah.
So,
well, with the other thing about word balloons or thought balloons is that, like it just says right there, romance comics without thought balloons are just characters kissing. It's always when characters are kissing in romance comics that you get their thoughts and what's going through their heads, and their objections and their concerns and their dissatisfactions and whatever, or their happiness.
Spider-Man is actually, in my opinion, the masterclass on the necessity of word balloons, because without word balloons for Spider-Man, he is just an a-hole who is just constantly mocking people. When you get the thought balloons, he's often saying the opposite of what he's actually thinking, which means he is projecting more confidence than he has, which gets you actually way more invested in Spider-Man as a character and the fights he takes part in than if you just have him being a snarky jerk.
Well, and the thing about it is, that makes Spider-Man an authentic character, right? Because, like, this is something that I have said for years and years and years. The only way to get confidence is to act like you already have confidence, and that's how you teach yourself to be confident, right?
Yeah, but how can you convey Peter Parker in a movie if you can't? You either have him being a jerk, or you have him being really nervous and he doesn't know if he can do this. Which should be his interior monologue while he's mouthing off to the bad guys. That's what he's just saying. Yeah.
That's one of those. Again, that's why I love Spider-Man in comics, and that's why I think they can do things with him in comics that they struggle to do with in film. This is a precise. All right, I don't want to make this about Spider-Man.
This is all worth talking about. But go ahead.
But I'll briefly synopsize, because while we're
we got real long in the tooth about this here.
Yeah, so the second issue with Metal Men briefly is I like this one a lot too. This one takes it up a notch. This is where it's the follow up to the previous one. The Metal Men are trying to fix there's Tin who broke, right?
Yeah.
And so they go to Dr. Tinker. Not that was he a one off for this one, or is he a guy?
Yeah, he's a one off.
Recognize him from anything.
Because there's so many.
Tin's name was Tinker when he was a human.
Okay. There's so many characters named Tinker or Tinkerer, but I think Tinker is a Marvel villain. So in this issue, the Metal Men are pretty clever. They disguise themselves as humans. They approach Dr. Tinker. They get this robotics dude on the low key to try to fix Tin. And instead, this giant green thing gets made turns out Dr. Tinker's like, I was a little out of my depth with this responsometer and everything, so I called an expert, and who does he call?
His boss.
He calls Lex Luthor, and I loved this part.
This is great. I love how he's just like, I got my employer. Like it's like nothing.
Yeah. And the I mean, it is clever of them, except that they are not thinking about intellectual property and business competitiveness or any of that. They are completely ignorant of that in going to a rival business and saying, here's the responsometer and here's some of the liquid, everything you need to steal the metal men. Can you help us?
They were desperate.
They're not.
So it's so Lex kind of turns it all on them to make a metal man made out of kryptonite. He makes the Kryptomen.
And you should explain why he can do that.
So the reason he can do this is where Byrn updates the Metalman mythos. And he makes it so that the responsometer is the heart and soul of these metal men, and then there's a particular
polymer.
That the responsometer gets put into, and the polymer is doing all of the abilities for these characters. The polymer can mimic any metal, so so they're not necessarily 100%. The metal itself, they are copying it. Essentially, they're imitating it. They're just imitating it so well, it is the thing.
Which is why they all have the shape-shifting powers,
right? Yeah. So this is why
they're plastic,
and this is why Mercury can be solid, because like he's not 100% Mercury. He's mimicking Mercury, but he's this polymer, this very advanced polymer. So it's two miraculous pieces of super science.
I actually didn't like this idea though, because that puts it all on the invention of the creator, and then it's like, well, why couldn't all of them just mimic whatever they want at any point in time?
Yeah,
if they're actually made of the metal, then you're limited to what they are made of.
I think that boiled down to the response meter. They basically, this is Magnus's.
You could have programmed all abilities to basically mimic literally any element on Earth into all of them.
Well, so then the comic book can happen.
Yeah, so
right.
I agree.
The motto of tonight, isn't it?
I agree. I agree. I like this update better. I agree with Cartoonicus in the sense that it would be good to establish that each of these polymers is unique in some way. They're not all the exact same polymer, and so one of them is better suited to being iron, which means that's why it's. So you could tweak this a little bit and make it a bit better. But to get back to the actual narrative, Lex Luthor does his classic, which is actually really neat, and I think doesn't he do this multiple times? Essentially, he sets Superman up by basically having one of his employees basically pretend.
Yeah.
So he has his employee pretend just to be in trouble. Superman crashes through. Lex Luthor has like blacked out all the windows with lead, so he can't see. So Superman crashes in, and instantly it's Kryptonite Man, or Metal Man Kryptonite. Tin. Kryptonoid, yeah. And this is where Superman, because he is in instant like deadly agony, and I learned a word from this issue, which is what ear?
Hell?
No, yeah, I know. I didn't know that word before. No, it's the what does he says? He says propinquitus, which is that's a deep. I've got a pretty good vocabulary. That is a deep vocabulary cut, so deep that Superman actually calls it out. Says, "Spare me the vocabulary demonstration." But this is also where Superman, I think, says, "Yeah, where the hell did you get kryptonite?" And this is Superman is no longer, he's dropped the Kansas gosh and golly, like he's in deathly pain.
And Lex says, speaking of vocabulary, he actually chides him for saying hell.
Language.
Yeah.
What's neat for following this is that Luthor describes his genius in being able to manipulate Magnus's invention.
Right.
But later on, it's established that Luthor's really smart, but that his mastery of Magnus's tech is not complete, and
Right.
so it's a little bit imprecise.
He's fiddling with somebody else's design, but he's not the master of it. Yeah.
And that nuance was so well done, because in other comics you just get me smarter because me good guy, you dumb because you bad guy, or something like that. But here you get this nuance of like, this isn't my creation, so my genius is demonstrated by my ability to like twist it to my purposes, but ultimately he does not have mastery of this tech because it is Magnus's thing. It's his baby, and that allows Superman an edge in the fight.
Yeah, and it's also great because like Luthor, like kind of, if I remember right, kind of half admits that it may not be exactly what it was, you know. At the same time, he's always like, also Superman, I'm a lot smarter than you, and that's what really matters.
I prefer this version of Lex where he's very smart, but he is not, you know, this I'm the number one smart guy in the world type thing, because obviously he never sees through the Clark Kent Superman thing, you know. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that he's not the biggest brain at, and you know, I hate having to explain that if he's supposed to be, you know, a level 14 intelligence or whatever it is, you know, that they go on about.
12th level in intellect.
I don't necessarily care so much about him being a scientist. I prefer him to be a genius tactically.
Yeah.
Well, the tactical thing he did that was real smart, Cartoonicus, is when he set Superman up with the employee, and he's clapping. Good job, Susan! Like that was a great.
The tactical thing he did was having about 3 other Plan Bs in this scenario that still managed to get him off the hook.
Yeah,
that too.
That is the Lex.
So this is the spoiler to the thing, right? So Superman saves the day. How, right? So Superman, Lex Luthor says, "Oh, I've got, as you can see with your X-ray vision, I have the responsometers in this tiny wooden box here." And Superman says, "Oh, hey, you're right. I can see those, and that means that my powers aren't gone."
So the mimicking part. This is the other cool thing, is that Byrne is weaving the lore and exposition into the storytelling.
Which
and
the
character.
I love.
So the idea that the polymer mimics means that that the kryptonite is not functioning at 100% kryptonite. So Superman still maintains enough of his. In this, the way it's broken down here is that the kryptonite guy could still kill Superman, but that Superman's powers aren't deprived.
Yeah.
Whereas normal kryptonite would just make him like crippled on the ground. And
it drives the energy from his skin cells, is the way it was described the very first time it was introduced in John Byrne's era, is that the energy actually like chases the energy out of his cells.
Oh,
I never did understand.
That's a good description. I like that. But in this circumstance, it's not chasing his energy away. It's just causing him immense, mind-numbingly damaging pain.
Right. It's painful, but if he ignores it, he has all his powers. Yeah, and that's the gist of this. I don't want to totally derail our recap here, but I just wanted to point out that the scene where Lex Luthor blasts all the metal men apart and then grabs all the responsometers, puts them in a box, and he's like, "That's it for the metal men. You know, I can do with them later, but without their metal, they're nothing. And I've just got them in a box. Their brains, their souls are just in here." And he's actually like kind of pontificating about it. You know, he's thinking about what it must be like. But he
one-shots them. It's pretty brutal. And actually, that panel is very brutal because Byrne's able to, because they're this metal polymer, he's able to like splatter them like blood without it being blood. So it's actually a pretty brutal scene.
Yeah, it is gruesome. It is back up and show that again.
It is gruesome.
It's a little more serious.
Yeah,
and
it's gruesome without being gruesome, which is another wonderful thing that this superhero comic can do. Yeah, they're splattered like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Here's the.
Once again, it doesn't really explain what he did.
Well, it does later. It says that
Magic
he's got
science
this broadcast
button.
that can interrupt there.
Cartoonicus, come on.
So that the comic can continue.
Oh, stop.
But it does explain at the very end that he still has this ability to jam their responsometers and make them fall apart. And so that's why they can't just go and attack him again. So, so Lex is kind of ahead of, he's caught off guard. He's lost the Metalman container. Superman grabs it, and then he just puts the Metalman back into the robot where he's melted the chest. I think I'm a little ahead here.
Yeah.
He fights for a couple pages here.
Yeah,
and then
he
there it
ruptures them by putting him over this plasma jet that erupted in the middle of the floor.
And now that it's liquid metal, he throws the other responsometers in, and because there's so much more of it, this is such a bigger robot than tin. Yeah. There's all this extra stuff that they can become, although they come out in their kryptonite.
Kryptonite-ish.
Yeah. I love this scene. This guy's erupting from this other body, which is withering away as they constitute themselves.
Yeah.
Sad robot says in chat, Metal Man looks inside plastic. Yeah.
I think about the fact that all this is being conveyed through different colors, but it's being drawn in black and white. So it'd be funny if, one of the colorists accidentally got something wrong. You realize, I was supposed to do those green because they're kryptonite.
It's interesting because I think coloring was one of the few things that Byrne didn't do. Because like in some of these comics, it's so interesting because many comics are such a team up affair. But Byrne's one of those guys who can do so much of it on his own.
Well, and the last issue, I think it was Kurt Swan did the inks over Byrne, but I'm not sure on this one.
But he was doing 2 comics a month, writing and drawing. He was doing action and the main Superman.
Good gravy.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like the fact that he was writing and drawing, and whereas it's other people would be lucky to do one of those things for one comic.
And think about it, he's writing and drawing 2 comics, and they're both classics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, come.
I know. Uh-huh.
We should cover the Sleaze issue sometime. The 2-parter with Mr. Miracle and Big Barda.
Oh gosh, not the one where Darkseid wants to film a porno.
Not Darkseid.
No, okay. I know what you're talking about.
The Sleaze character, yeah.
Okay.
But it's actually, I like it, but there's so many people who do these videos on YouTube going, this is one of the worst stories ever. And it's like, are you kidding? I like that one.
Well, I definitely like this one. The Superman saves the day. Surprise. And he takes all the Metalmen back. And this is another great Superman moment because Magnus has been still the grump. And he's like, no, I'm not fixing you because I really got to stick up my butt. But Superman says, bro. he puts a hand on his shoulder. He says, bruh. And Magnus says, well, because it's you, Superman, I can't say no to you. Of course, because you can't.
That's what I was talking about as far as like just the coziness, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like Superman is such a bro that like Magnus is like, maybe I'm out of line, man. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's by the way, that tank, the reason he's got the tank is because their original bodies are in there, and Lex had to generate his own polymer in order to come up with some extra, and it's not as good quality as the Metalmen's, but notice it's also kryptonite. I think there's more to the polymer that like the polymers are also kind of attuned to be this metal or that metal, so you can't just switch it back and forth easily.
Superman doesn't seem to be in extreme pain anymore, despite.
Well, he's just powering through it, through the pureness of his heart.
Yeah, I think he could run and grab a lead suit in between or something, but yeah. And I love that Tin comes out and he's mad, and although he's still stuttering, I wish he wasn't even stuttering. Just because he's resolved. He's like, I say we go get Lex Luthor.
You know what? I've actually seen very well done scenarios of Porky Pig being angry and aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how I translated that in my mind.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like the whole reason he has a stutter is he's got an insecurity, and he feels he feels bad, he feels weak. And so if he's not feeling bad and he's not feeling weak, his stutter should go away. But it's also part of his his general personality,
You know what though? That would fit though, like I was saying, into what happens when a character acts out of character. So perhaps if there is one moment to do that, it would have been in that panel.
Yeah. Well, I've talked before about how I actually was putting together a Metal Men pitch throughout the 90s. I actually wanted to do a Metal Men cartoon when I was still thinking I might just try doing that if I couldn't break into comics. And it was I was studying the Metal Men either way and coming up with stuff. And yeah, I was kind of thinking that the problem with this one is that whole subatomic the responsometer being so small that you can't see it with the naked eye. That's almost too much. We are talking about a supercomputer that can equal the human mind.
It can't be so small that he was like literally able to pick it up with a pair of tweezers.
Yeah, but it is. I'm just saying, it's unbelievable enough. If it was the size of a marble or the size of, actually when they kill off Gold later, it's the size of a cassava melon. So it's not consistent.
Size.
I'm just given that that miniseries spun out of this, it's kind of weird that they changed the responsometer from what John Byrne came up with to being this big melon, but that makes it believable that you can then crush it and destroy Gold, which is what happens in that series. But
well, you know what it is? It's like eventually we reached a limit to how thin we can cut. What is it called?
Microprocessors.
Yeah, I can't think of the term of the metal, but when that happened, yes, thank you.
Silicon. Yeah, okay.
When that happened, suddenly the iPhone just kept getting bigger and bigger every generation, right? You could say that between here and then, their R meters just got better and better, and in order to do that, they had to get bigger and bigger.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it was kind of asking too much to say that the little tiny thing can be everything that runs the Metal Men, especially for the 80s, when this came out. But even the
superhero universe, though, I mean,
it is. I know that. I mean, it's miraculous no matter what. It's just asking a little too much to say that that's
so
possible.
Anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to go ahead and move toward wrapping up because I know we've been on for quite a while, and I don't want him to wear out too fast.
I did want to talk about Superman. I before we started the show, I said I wanted to talk about something about it. But should I do it now or should I wait?
No, I think now is fine. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one of the things I like about John Byrne's attempt to revamp Superman during Man of Steel's relaunch and all that in '86, and Marv Wolfman worked with him on that. Marv Wolfman wrote the other Superman, The Adventures of Superman, and the two of them worked together, and they really wanted to bring down Superman's power level at the time from the way
Silver
off.
Age.
Yeah. and one of the things I remember is that he chided Lois, who I think she did something, and he's like, if I'd been on the other side of the planet, I wouldn't have heard you yelling for half a day. That's how long the sound takes to travel. You can't just count on me being able to hear you because the speed of sound, I might not have been able to hear it for hours. And I thought that was a great, that's entirely sensible. Unfortunately, the Lois and Superman TV show this year had him hearing earthquakes in China the moment they happen, and they explain some stupid thing, and that makes him like globally conscious or something. It's not even hearing. It's even worse. It's like even more powerful. I like that they're trying to bring down
for him to feel the vibrations through the earth.
Yeah, they tried to bring it down like he can only hear at the speed of sound. So even if he's across Metropolis, he won't be able to get to the scene of a shooting before the shooting's over because it takes a minute. And so I like that he also can't see, like he explains numerous times about his X-ray vision. It's not like he can just look through the wall and see a perfect thing. He has to interpret what he's seeing. And sometimes he cannot make sense of what he's seeing.
So he no longer sees everybody naked all the time?
Well, then they did that, so it just kind of ruined it. But John Byrne did that too, and when that one issue where there's a robot that's like tinkering, or the satellite's tinkering with his abilities, and that Lex Luthor's doing that. I think that's number 6 or 7. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he can look through clothes and all that, but it's also that if he's like looking through a wall, he can't necessarily see a picture perfect scene of what's on the opposite side. Right. Things like that. So I like that he's got these limitations. He can be hurt a lot more easily, and he wasn't supposed to be able to lift the planet, until Grant Morrison said he's lifting the entire planet. Yeah. He's not supposed to be able to do that.
Bloody Grant.
I remember back to the, I don't remember if it was literally the first issue or if it was one of the reboots later, but their wording was nothing less than a shell
bursting shell
could literally break his skin.
That's the golden age.
That's the golden age.
Yeah, and I wish it was possible, but I remember he'd be taken down by electric blasts and things like that when Marv Wolfman wrote him. Marv Wolfman had him even weaker, where he can't even catch a Concorde jet coming in. He's like, I'm not going to be able to hold this thing up. Everybody on it is going to die, but at least I can make it miss the city. And then somebody pointed out, well, wait a minute, he lifted the entire biggest boat in the world that Lex Luthor owns in Man of Steel. So why can't he lift a plane?
Wouldn't it be the first time that Marv overdoes it?
Well,
but the two of them, they couldn't agree how much.
If you actually try to lift a boat.
Yeah, but they're trying to explain, it's like even between the two of them, they can't agree how much they want to depower him. But I like that he was very depowered at this time. And
I don't know if I like the term depowered but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get the concept.
He's not cosmic powered. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. They have rebooted him at a particular power level that is more relatable to the story.
Yeah.
And I do like that. I think that's a good take, and I do think that a lot of very good Superman stories are written in this vein.
Yeah.
Even in the 60s, when he was operating at much higher levels, he was also very it's so funny because the 60s do get that reputation of being, that's when Superman could do anything. It's ridiculous. The 60s was also when Siegel wrote, in Elseworlds moments where Superman dies from kryptonite, whereas in many other stories he overcomes it through willpower or whatever, like in this one. Siegel was able to be like, no, Lex Luthor just actually in this alternate universe just flat out killed him. He turned green and he died. So it's one of the best Elseworlds stories it's ever been written. We should definitely take a look at it sometime. But no, I agree. I do like this mode for Superman, and I do agree that when Grant Morrison takes him later and just makes him into the sun god Apollo, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, maybe a mistake. I just think it's a bit of a misstep. Maybe.
Yeah. Did you? I mean, it sounds like you've read older comics, Twitless. So, I mean, back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was just, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Superman could finish an adventure on another planet, be back on Earth, and he'd look off at the planet that he came from and be able to see what's happening on the other planet and how, he's now happy and he's found his princess. Oh, yay. And then
what was it? I remember a time when he inhaled all this poison, flew out into space and blew it out again. And in doing so, he had to choose some old dead solar system that he knew was dead because he ended up blowing out the entire solar system.
That sounds like the 60s. I don't know about the solar, but that's the 60s. I actually have a soft spot for Superman in the 60s. We got some really good stuff there.
Superman could just jump up into the sky and start going fast, and all of a sudden rings with years written on them, concentric rings. He just then he's traveling in time. That's all he'd have to do to travel in time.
But there's so much
like that had to go away for the John. I mean, we talk about John Byrne. It's like, he didn't do much. It's like, compared to what Superman used to do, it's much more reasonable. Yeah.
That's
Everything since then has been better than the power level he was at in the early 80s. That's all.
Except for moving the Earth.
I will defend Superman in the 60s and Golden Age or
Sure.
Silver Age, but I do
'Cause of
agree.
course you will.
I will, because there's some good. There's so many good.
I do like it. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that, he was pretty OP. When people say, how can you write a story with him? If you're that OP, it's understandable what they're
That's what
It
that's-
really doesn't help trying to fit him in the Justice League, too.
It was OP, but that's where I think Kryptonite was deadlier back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Except the pink stuff.
My
Because,
problem
like I said,
is
because
you shouldn't
Siegel
have
was
to
willing
have-
to. Siegel was willing to. Anyway, I don't want to derail this too much. I just want to say that, like, I think to lean into what Hutch is saying that I agree with, and I think you and I are we both like Silver Age stuff, but I
Yeah.
think there is something to be said about this approach. It was different. It was different than the Silver Age. The Silver Age is good. I like the Silver Age. There's great stuff in there. There are things that Silver Age did that they never did afterwards. That was good stuff with the emotional storytelling. Like Superman had so many girlfriends, and it got to a point where it became a problem, and he had to solve it, and by splitting himself into Superman Red and Superman Blue, but by doing this, it created and I think part of it is that each of these versions maybe speak to its time very well. The 60s were the 60s. This was the 80s. It was a different time. People had different sensibilities, maybe some different. They wanted something a little more raw. They wanted things a little more toned down. They wanted to take it seriously, but in a way that was still fun. And these comics struck a chord, and they wasn't perfect. They had to kind of, with Superman, it was difficult to kind of find, the right balance. But I would say on the whole, I think that Byrne and company did a really good job of rebooting this character. Again, this run and this era is considered by many to be one of the best. Some people consider it to be the best, and there's a strong argument for that. And so I agree that this approach to reboot, again, I don't like the term depowered, but so I'll reinterpret that in a positive way and say rebooted to have power limits that suit these particular narratives.
You should
And,
be a
One half
politician.
dozen another.
Yeah, exactly. It
Yeah.
is, but that's just my way. That's just my wording because I like it better. But it's true. I agree. I think this works. This is definitely the tone I think I like to hit with Omega Girl with my comics plug. So if you like what we talked about today, you're gonna like the chord I strike with Omega Girl because I'm channeling a chunk of what we read today. So it was, it is cope. I'm just saying that I like my cope, so I'm gonna go with it.
So you're gonna have
fine.
Omega Girl.
Spoken like a true academic, Footless. I approve. So the other thing is, final thoughts on it. Let's go ahead and go around, and Cartoonicus, I want to start with you. What do you think about this duology? What are your takeaways?
Well, thinking about what Footless was just saying within the last few minutes, I guess it does occur to me that much like the movie, as someone who does not like Superman, this is surprisingly palatable, for him. But mainly, my takeaway was, just not knowing much about the Metal Men, getting a little more taste of them. Some things struck out to me that were very interesting. I'd never seen them combine like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know that was a thing. Did not know they had literal practiced maneuvers with numbers attached to them. So that was all very interesting. I liked that.
Yep.
Overall, I mean, I don't necessarily think I have, a low or high rating for it. It just was what it was. And it's another insight to the world of Hutch. He always brings us something unique.
Yes. Hutch, what are your on your reread, your reflection? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first story is much sillier than I remember. I mean, when I was rereading it before, I'd reread it like a few months ago, and I was like, boy, that really does seem ridiculous that they're walking over the opened vat, and Superman leans on a railing, and the railing gives way, and Superman, remember, he is Superman. He's pretending to be Clark Kent, but he doesn't have the wherewithal to like catch himself in an instant and go, oh, I shouldn't fall, and just, maybe just pretend, oh my gosh, this railing came loose. And, instead he actually falls in, and then they don't rush him off to the emergency Silkwood shower.
Yeah, that part was funny.
Think about that.
Yeah, oh, are you okay? You fell into the
Moving on with the tour. Yeah, that part was funny.
And he has the thought balloon. He has the thought balloon that covers what you were thinking. He's like, I looked at the stuff and made sure that I didn't have to explain why I'm not dead. But at the same time, they don't know that. Why aren't they going, you should be dead?
Yeah. Lois should at least be a little more concerned. He fell into
it's great because
toxic vat.
Like,
well, I couldn't tell whether or not she was supposed to know yet or anything.
And then she doesn't have any idea.
She doesn't know until they're engaged.
But and then he doesn't know necessarily when they got engaged either, if he's not
that's true.
Superman
That's true.
reader.
It was
But
3 years.
This is So and then it just occurred to me as we're reading through it, I'm like, why does he conjure up a cape and a costume? If he's just genetically copying the Kryptonian, it never occurred to me to question it until now, because John Byrne just sets this tone that you accept it, and it's just it's because it's a fun book and it has to happen, and it's like it's more fun than even the animated cartoons would have with this. It's like, because they would probably say, that's a little too silly. And they wouldn't do it. And he just goes for it. And he
sells it.
He sells it.
How he sells it.
He sells it very well. I agree.
But I think that what I really love is that he takes the Metal Men and he makes them work, I think, better than any other of the eras of Metal Men before and after. He just gets them right. And I really wish that he had done the series after this that he had talked about doing. The Metal Men had this one miniseries in '94 that really kind of ruined them. It explained that down in Subbasement 13, there's human bodies that are their real bodies that were transferred into these, which is every time he reboots them, he has to reboot them off of the human that they were copied from. And then those bodies die, and he now has no way to ever rebuild them again. And then Gold dies. Gold, by the way, was Magnus's brother, and the soul of Magnus's brother. And then Magnus transfers his dying body into a new responsometer and becomes Viridium, which is a made-up alien metal. It's just terrible. It's contrary to the point of the Metal Men, which is that they have metal properties, that you can explain. And he's the super strongest metal ever. It's just terrible. And they did not do anything.
A temporary thing for just a single story arc?
Or? That is the new Metal Men, and that went nowhere. And then Mark Waid had Alloy in the Kingdom Come. We don't have to talk about Kingdom Come. I'm just saying, the only thing you saw of Metal Men was that they formed a humanoid, and you could tell by the colors, that's the Metal Men. And they've now formed one big giant called Alloy, and he's always in that form. He or they are always in that form. They never separate. That's all we know about the future. But then, from then on, if you saw the Metal Men in our time, you know how everything from Kingdom Come has to happen. It's like they form up the Alloy just like they're called upon to do, and it's like I don't want to see that. I want to see them form a steam shovel or something. But they're forming up the giant human. The colors are exactly where they should be for the Kingdom Come universe that I don't want to be the future of the DCU, obviously. And but you never saw anything else of the Metal Men until Identity Crisis. Gold suddenly appears alive and well. And then they just, that's a mistake. But then when Superboy is punching reality and he punches Wonder Woman to be back in, now she starts at the same time as Superman, Batman. No explanation of how that works. He punches reality, and all of a sudden, Metal Men are back the way they were. And he punches reality, and Jason Todd's back alive. That's that terrible.
I keep forgetting that was the original way that happened.
That's the reason. He just punches reality and changes things. So the Metal Men are just suddenly back. I had a whole mini series that I would have loved to have pitched to Dan DiDio, explaining that would undo the 94 miniseries, but in a way that doesn't just say, forget that, but actually explains it all. And it even ties in with this, with the whole thing about how how Mercury chose his color, chose his appearance, and the colors are based on, programming and things like that Viridium would not be Magnus, but would instead be the Platinum Man left over from the 80s. All this stuff would tie together. I had a really good story, never got to talk to Dan DiDio about it. And I later find out that it's his favorite team. And he might have actually sat and listened to me if I'd pitched that. But I never knew that. So anyway, it's not about me and my stories that never happened. But but the Metal Men have been, we talked about this in the other episode. They've been tried again and again. None of them have the fun of John Byrne's run here. That's my input.
Yep.
Well said.
I'm also reminded of a time when you could actually manage to tell an entire story from beginning to end in a single comic book issue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, 2.
Or sometimes 17 pages.
No, because each one of them was still their own monster of the week story.
Yeah,
that's true. I'll give you that.
They're very self-contained.
I'll give you that.
Good period.
Yeah. So Twitless, okay. You go ahead and give your final thoughts here.
It's pretty brief. John Byrne is cool. Platinum is hot.
More people should read this comic. So I guess that's my closing thoughts. This was tasty 80s comics, guys. This is what I got into when I first started reading comics, with these kind of stories there's enough drama to feel like it matters, and there's so much fun that it brings you back month after month. Flipping through the books on the spinner racks, and swearing at the guys that dog-eared the last issue of Detective Comics. But I'll tell you, I love this. I love this book. This was old school comics. It was great. Thank you, Hutch, for this awesome suggestion.
Thank you for letting me do this.
Week's show, maybe. I don't know. Are we? Can we do Hush next week?
I have to find my copy of it.
I should be able to get it. I think I should be able to get a copy of it.
That's the plan. Then Twitless has said it's Hush next week.
Okay.
So
I've got a week to find it.
Yep. I know right where mine is, but I'm not sure I can get to it easy. It's in my file cabinet that got buried under a recent project. So I'm gonna have to. Should
we do the entire stream on mute since it's Hush?
On what?
On mute since it's Hush.
Oh, very funny.
Yeah.
No, I have many things to say about Hush.
Okay.
But that's it. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. And if you are in the Scottsbluff area of Western Nebraska, not this weekend, but next weekend, the 30th, High Plains Minicon in Minutair, just up the road from me here, about 9 miles that away. That's the story. Next week, Hush, and then the week after, I don't have nothing scheduled, so I better get on the plan and come up with something.
New name announcement.
A new dame? Oh, new name
announcement.
But she said new dame. I'm like, what? Yeah, that'll be the first show in September. That makes sense. Brand new show in 2 weeks. It'll be the same old show, but it will be a brand new show. I swear it. So, anyway, that's it. That's the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Catch you all next time. Until, get out there, read some comics. Maybe even buy some from me in Minutair. Bye.